Hello and welcome to PMP Prep Exam in a nutshell. I am Muhammad Radi, Director of Project Metrics Solution.com. Today we are going to talk about the initiating process group. This is our methodology to start how to study for the PMP Prep exam in a nutshell according to the processing group. Our objective today, when you finish our session, you should be able to identify the primary inputs, the tool and technique, the outputs of the two processes in the initiating process group, which is develop project charter and the identify stakeholders. When you look at 4.1, please look at it, chapter 4. Number 13 indicates chapter 13. So don't distract yourself from the numbers, because in the exam you are not going to see numbers, you are going to see the process name. That's all. And after that, I'd like you to be familiar with the keywords in the initiating process group. What the purpose? Two things: to produce the project charter and to produce the stakeholder register. What the project charter is all about. The project charter is the purpose of creating the project charter in the initiating to authorize you as a project manager the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities, and number two, to identify the people, groups, or organization that could impact or be impacted by outcome of the project stakeholder register. That's what the output of the stakeholder register. Now, I'd like you to be familiar with some keywords. For example, develop project charter, identify stakeholder, stakeholder register, stakeholder analysis, business case. The purpose of doing this to be familiar with the expression, and you connect the keywords with knowledge area, processing group, or process, or PMP, or project document. Now, let's see what the makeup of the initiating. It's made up of only two processes: develop project charter and identify stakeholders. And develop project charter is described in detail in chapter 4 in the project integration management. And number two, the identify stakeholder is described in chapter 13 in the project stakeholder management. And what the output of the two processes you find here, you're going to get the project charter, and from the process identify stakeholders, the outcome is a stakeholder register. Now, these two processes, you can locate them in page for the develop project charter on page 66. And when you identify stakeholders, you find the inputs and the outputs on page 393 on PMP guide. Now, what the outputs, how to get the project charter, what the input. You see here the business case that indicates the inputs when you develop the project charter. The index here in the business case, the arrow of the business case is about justification of your project, and the project statement of the work is about the deliverable, and the agreement here or contracts about coming from outsource or inside your company. And then enterprise environmental factors, which is talking about, if you still remember, it's about talking about the market demands, the needs of the new regulation, and the organization process assets, talking about the process which is owned by the company. The tool and technique here, we are going to use expert judgment to uh, give you his input in terms of knowledge, and then facilitation technique, which is you are going to exercise this one in your meetings, and then the output is project charter. I'll focus here on the business case, the justification, because the business case is not all the benefit cost ratio, the justification of your project, the benefit cost ratio, the opportunity cost, the payback period, all these tools, you are going to use it to justify your project. The above terms here are not listed in the PMP guide. Now, For the exam, they are going to ask you about the significance, um, are going to need to ask you about which bigger number is good for your project or less time is better. There is no calculation. I'm going to use three examples here. Benefit cost ratio, and I'm going to use the payback period as an example to make my point, and the internal rate of return, how we are, you might see it in the exam. Um, for the significance here, for example, you have the situation, what does a benefit cost ratio of 9.09 means? He will provide you with the benefits and he will provide you with a cost, and then you divide this by this and you get this numbers. So what this numbers 9.09 means to you? The answer is for every dollar invested in a project, you will get 9.09 as a return. Another example here regarding the payback period calculation, not required for the PMP exam. And from this, you might see two projects and you have to choose one of them. For example, project A has a payback period 15 months, and the project B, the payback period is 21 months. As a project manager, and you are trying to justify the importance of the project, which project you are going to use? Yes, of course, you are going to use the answer project A, because project A, the payback period is 15 months. Now, let's go and take another example on a business case. As I said, calculation not required for the PMP exam. You just need to know the significance, if it is less time or it is bigger number. For example, the internal rate of return. For example, you have a project A, and it gives he will in the exam you will see the numbers here: 21%, the internal rate of return, and that project B you have another numbers here, 7%, and you have project C. And project D has an IRR of 19%. Which of these would be the best project? Of course, you see the bigger number here is 33. Now, now let's talk about the output. When you develop the project charter, what the output? The output of the developed project charter, it is very easy. It's the project charter. It's very important for you as a project manager, because the major content here, your name will be there, your authority level, and your responsibilities, and the name and the authority level of the sponsor or other person authorizing the project charter, and the triple constraint, which you are talking about: the scope, the time, and the cost. And the project charter, you might use it as input to when you develop your scope management plan, and when you are developing your time management plan, and when you are developing your cost management plan. We covered develop project charter. Now we need to cover identify stakeholders in our initiating. What the purpose of when you identify stakeholders? Of course, you're looking for the people who are impacting your project. It is the process of identifying all people or organization affected by the projects and documenting relevant information regarding their interest, involvement, and impact on project success. So when you identify your stakeholders, what the output? The output here is a stakeholder register. What I should do to put as input to develop to get the stakeholder register. You will put input here: project charter, procurement documents, enterprise environmental factors, and organization process assets. The tool and technique here is stakeholder analysis, and you still need the expert or SME, and there is meetings, and this is the output. Try to focus on the three things here. We covered the project charter. Let me talk about the stakeholder analysis. When you study, try to make your own notes. Um, Try to get the process, try to make the inputs. Don't be overwhelmed with many names. Try to focus on one thing which make significance or you still remember. Now, let's talk about the stakeholder analysis as a tool and technique. The stakeholder analysis is focused on the level of interest of your stakeholders, their influence and power and expectation, their level of risk tolerance, and all those things. You can see it on figure 13-4, page 397. So the output here, the stakeholder register, you're gonna get identification information. For example, the name of the stakeholders, his position, organization, the role in his in this project, contact info, information, email, phone numbers, and you make assessment information. What the main expectation of this guy or the stakeholder, his potential influence in the projects, and then you can make classification in terms of the internal or his external, his supporter, neutral, resistance. He's a leader. He might be unaware of your project. Now, let's talk about the summary here. As I said, this is the summary from your left side. You're going to find the develop project charter and chapter 4 and chapter 13, where you can find identify stakeholders. I make summarize of the inputs, tool and technique, and the output. Now, I have a quiz for you. Um, After you're finishing this session, I'd like you to go to look one by one. For example, develop project charter. Is it a process? Is it a processing group? Project charter, is it a document? Is it part of PMP? Is it a tool and technique? And when you identify stakeholders, is it a process or a processing group? And you do the same thing with a stakeholder register, a stakeholder analysis, and the business case. Now let's see one of the examples from the exam. The question is, stakeholder analysis is performed as part of A, scope management, B, collect requirement, C, define scope, stakeholder management. So what the answer here? The answer here, you look at number one, scope management is not, is part of planning scope management. Collect requirement, I'm sure you are not familiar with this, but you can use your logic. It is part of planning scope management, and define scope, again, it is part of the scope management. Stakeholder management, this is might be the right one. So stakeholder analysis is a tool used in the identify stakeholder process in the knowledge area of the stakeholder management. Another example here, I'm going to use what is the step after developing project charter. I know now that you are expert, and try to get page 61 in the PMBOK guide, and you know the process in each processing group. And these as when you look at the question, what is I'd like you to look at one, develop project management plan, which is part of the planning process group. Two, direct and managed project is part of the execution process group. And when you monitor and control the project work, which is part of the monitoring and controlling process group. And then when you identify stakeholder, which is part of the initiating. So this is the right answer when you try to look at the questions and try to make the everyone every part of the questions related to which part. Having said that, I'd like you to go back again to the question. When you look at the question, you are not familiar with it. So, for example, scope management, you are not familiar with it. And the question here asking you for the stakeholder analysis. Try to relate the most related things to the stakeholder analysis. And when you can dismiss or eliminate A or B or C, and then you come up with the answer C. This is the way I like you to, when you're answering the questions, try to not to memorize, but to make the logic out of it. If you like my video, please subscribe and please share, and please go to my www.projectmetricsolution.com, and you go to the resources, and please download for free the questions. You're going to see lots of questions over there. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the planning processing group. See you later, guys. Thank you.